I broke up with my then-fiancée Savannah in 2022 after a long and tense relationship. Her demeanor and actions had abruptly changed because she had been developing an unhealthy obsession with one of her co-workers. Their affair was exposed when I inadvertently overheard one of her phone conversations. She stopped trying to cover it up once I told her about it. We had been planning a couple's getaway for months, and this happened approximately 1 week before our departure. So I had planned a horrible pity party instead of a 5-day weekend with my soon-to-be bride. However, I required more room, and the deposit was non-refundable. While she gathered her belongings, I opted to go alone. Seeing our lives reduced to categories is too painful for me to handle. I was on my way to Alaska. While Alaska may not immediately spring to mind when planning a holiday, the state actually boasts some world-class ski resorts. You could find almost anything at this one store. Lodge amenities include a restaurant, bar, and fitness center. Not a great deal, but it was more than anticipated. 2 of the many two-man cottages had saunas built right in, and Savannah and I had leased one of those. The thing was really expensive, but there was complimentary champagne. What on earth? It was early Thursday morning when I arrived. Upon checking in, I informed the receptionist that I would be traveling alone. In response, she gave me her first compassionate look and escorted me to my cabin without my asking. Just a short distance from the ski lifts, it was one of 6 cabins in a cluster. An employee walked me through the sauna's operation with the bucket and all, helped me locate the bedding, and explained how to place an order for room service. After that, they gave me the keys and told me to go. Because Savannah and I booked so long in ahead, we were able to get a little discounted rate at the location. As a result, we were unprepared for the harsh winter. About a week had passed, with nothing but cloud cover. The weather was oppressively gloomy because we had scheduled a bit earlier in the year than is ideal. A gray-washed sun, like a shy schoolboy peering through layers of clouds, was all I could see even at noon. Still, a couple of other people were present. Sitting in the cabin directly opposite from me were a man and a lady dressed similarly, and sporting what can only be described as socialite hipster styles. They sported Instagram-tagged personalized shoulder prints. I thought it was funny at first, but now I can't stop seeing how much fun they have together. Since I had previously thought less of them, it almost made me feel guilty about it. A couple of males in their 50s were present, although they didn't appear to be a romantic match at first glance. You may make assumptions about their relationship based on the information provided. They didn't even bother to bring skis, so I assume they were simply trying to escape. They appeared to be rather relaxed, spending the majority of their time making use of the lodge's facilities. A guy and a woman in their early 40s were the last couple to move in next door. It seemed to me that they were parents taking a much-needed break from their children for the weekend. They used terms for your sister and brother that only a strict parent could use while on the phone, and they repeated themselves a lot. Their names were Tyler and Ginger that I learned. However, I believe that I was the most noticeable person. There, we designed this entire cluster with couples in mind. The employees were too embarrassed to even ask me to leave. They clearly wanted to take care of me because something had gone wrong. I received a free breakfast, some extra chocolates on my pillow, and their tone of apology was so pitiful, as if they were scared I would crack. Truthfully, there were a few instances when I did. On the first day, I stayed in bed for the most part. I wasn't even exhausted. The vastness of space and the dearth of sound were physically taxing. In an effort to find Savannah's latest post, I repeatedly refreshed my social media feeds. I continued providing updates, repeatedly. I didn't come to the realization that I'd wasted the entire day moping about until it was far after 7 o'clock. I made up my mind that I would attempt to turn this situation around as best I could. I made my way to the pub after letting my phone's battery die. I spent just enough time and money to strike up conversations with a few of the people. In addition to the groups of friends and singles, there were just a small number of them. I happened to spend the evening with Tyler and Ginger, who happened to be my next-door neighbors. By complete coincidence, without hesitation, they verified that, indeed, they were weary parents. We became inseparable after I handed them a mojito to show my empathy. Tyler stood at a towering 6 feet 6 inches tall and had a completely bald head. In contrast, Ginger was only 5 feet 4 inches tall. She had clearly been under a lot of pressure. It dragged beneath her gaze. She continued to laugh uncontrollably at every joke we made. Despite this, however, it's possible that the mojitos were to blame. Afterwards, I joined Tyler in the backyard for a smoke break later. That night, I thought this was a good opportunity to sabotage my life a little, even though I hadn't smoked since college. Leaning on the railing, he held out a lit Marlboro Red to me. Tyler went into full-on guy support mode while I was telling Ginger and Tyler about Savannah and our breakup. At least there's no kids involved. He sighed, sucking down his cigarette. It gets hella complicated, you know, and fast. But it's worth it, right? I asked. Tyler grimaced, bobbing his head side to side, making a little unsure hand gesture. Depends, he continued. I mean, they're gonna suck the life out of you. It's gonna be every day, every way, all the time. There ain't no you anymore, it's us, you know. Yeah, I nodded. I get it. He finished his cigarette, flicking it into the snow. But you can see it. You can see yourself in another person. It's hard to explain, but it's like, that's you. And unless you really hate yourself, you can't help but to love him. So it's worth it then, Tyler snorted, heading back inside. He blew the last puff of his cigarette out his nose. Or it might have just been hot air mixing with the cold night. On theirs, I stayed behind, looking over the dark snow. Nothing gleamed or glistened. It was like a frozen black ocean as far as the eye could see. Not a single star twinkling above. The entire resort felt like something lost in deep space, isolated and displaced, a monument to comfort in a subdued wilderness. I could see the others debating what song to put on for karaoke. They were gonna drag me up there eventually too. I didn't mind that much. I can do a decent Killer Queen. I turned back towards the endless snow a final time, and I swear something glimmered. And it wasn't snowing, eyes. I woke up close to noon the following day, the result of one too many drinks and not a single alarm set for the first time in years. I drank what felt like a bathtub's amount of seltzer, threw up, and grabbed some takeaway lunch from the restaurant. Got my wallet back too, not that I'd noticed ever losing it. As I headed out, one of the receptionists stopped me. She gently grabbed my arm, excusing herself. Did you see a woman here last night? She asked. About 5'7", dark eyes, blonde hair. No, was she here with anyone? That's what we're trying to figure out. She smiled. We think there's an unregistered guest. She's not your missing plus one, is she? I shook my head, causing temporary motion sickness. I reassured her that I hadn't seen anyone matching that description, and promised to let her know if I did. It was strange. She seemed a lot more worried than I thought one might be about an uninvited guest. I took some time to actually go skiing that day. There's something mind-clearing about plummeting down the slopes, without a care in the world, no one to break your stride, free rein as far as the eye could see. I lost track of time and ended up spending a little longer than anticipated. That evening, I got to the restaurant just as they were about to close. I managed to sneak in an order for a plate of chicken carbonara, but I was the only guest left eating something. The others were at the tail end of dessert. That's when I heard some commotion from one of the other tables. Looking up, I could see the two men from the other couple's cabin. It was a proposal. The whole lodge erupted into cheers. Free drinks from the bar, hugs and kisses all around. And I was stuck sitting there with my plate of pasta. To round out the proposal, there was a short firework display outside. Blue and green rockets against the coal-black sky, lighting up the snow like sand dunes of emerald and sapphire. It was beautiful, and I didn't even get a good look of it. As guests funneled back inside, I finished my plate. I was about to go congratulate the couple and join the budding party when I heard a knock. The restaurant staff were too busy closing up to notice it, but I saw someone outside. She couldn't have been older than maybe 20, 21. She wore a thin, black nylon jacket and a trucker cap, resembling some kind of catering crew. She gave me a little hand wave, pointing to the door. You mind letting me in? Sure, yeah. Strange. The glass door was already unlocked. I thought she might have been locked out. Thanks, she smiled. Must have pulled it the wrong way. Sorry, she pushed past me but turned with a smile as she did. Her eyes weren't just a dark brown. They were almost black. "You should join us," she smiled. "It's gonna be fun." She disappeared into the bar crowd. Her smile faded behind a blonde ponytail the second she thought I wasn't watching. It took me a moment to realize she matched the description of the woman the receptionist had been asking me about. I tried getting a hold of a staffer, but they were running about like headless chickens. After a short but valiant effort, I decided to celebrate with the others. After all, it was Friday night and I needed a reason to drink, or a better reason at least. Things got a bit hazy round midnight. The newly betrothed were off in a corner, sharing a bottle of red. Tyler was trying his best to keep Ginger from a fifth cocktail. The hipster couple had retired early, choosing to spend the remainder of the night in their cabin. Other guests filtered out one by one, leaving a handful of people behind. As I stumbled back to my cabin for the night, intent on spending some time in the sauna, I noticed the strange blonde woman in the distance. She was standing outside the hipster's cabin. Knocking on their door, she looked back at me with an expressionless face, her dark eyes looking like holes in the head. I could tell something was off about her. I always could, but I didn't know exactly what. I spent the night in the sauna, not by choice, but happenstance. I didn't even start it. I just put my head down on a towel and blacked out. By morning, I was hungover. It was also the only time the sun decided to peek out, if only to tease my retinas. I spent some time getting ready, munching on a couple of protein bars and chugging a bottle of orange juice. I'd knit from the open bar. Just past lunch, I was the only one on my feet. I didn't spot any other guests from the cluster, and all the cabins were closed. No sign of the strange blonde woman either. Maybe that was for the best. But the more I wandered about, the more I noticed something was off. The ski lift wasn't working, and most of the main lodge was locked. All the lights were off, both inside and out. The restaurant's curtains were drawn, as well as at the bar and the reception. The gym was locked with a closed sign out front. I tried knocking, but no one opened. I tried the main lodge and the other cabins. Nothing. I looked all over the resort, but it was all empty. The parking lot, the maintenance shed, changing rooms. Everything was either locked up tight or empty. Something must have happened. One of the side entrances leading to the restaurant kitchen was not just locked, but chained up. Going back to my cabin, I checked my phone, only to remember that I'd let the battery drain. There was no power to charge it. The temperature was also going down fast. It didn't take long before I had to bundle up with a jacket, even indoors. By the time I realized I'd run out of options, the sun was already setting. I sat on my bed with my legs huddled up against my chest, looking out the window. The snow had stopped glistening, as the sun had once again wrapped itself with a cloud cover. That's when I realized what had bothered me about that strange woman the other night. There was no vapor coming from her breath, no hot mixing with cold. It was as if she hadn't breathed at all. By nightfall, I could see movement in the distance. Doors opening, lights turning on. There was laughter coming from the main lodge. A few remaining fireworks from the other night flaring up into the night sky. Someone had cranked up the music in the bar a little too loud. Heat was coming back, and power was restored. I fumbled for my phone, plugging in the charger. As I did, I spotted one of my neighbors through the window. One of the two older betrothed men. He looked ecstatic, skipping through the snow like a child. He lost his glasses as he haphazardly threw snow into the air, leaving an arc of snowflakes slowly tumbling back to the ground. I walked up to the window, ready to call on him. I wondered where his fiancée was, but I only had to wonder for a moment. His fiancée was dragging the headless corpse of the hipster woman behind him. Colorful jacket and all, I crouched down, covering my mouth with my hands. I didn't want a scream to slip out. I could hear my chest pounding in my heart, making me twitch with every beat. I felt my cheeks flush as my tongue went dry. They dragged the body through the snow, their hands and faces covered in red. There was a long trail of blackened blood reaching all the way from the hipster cabin to the middle of the field. The betrothed kissed, laughed, howled, and cheered. They waved at someone off in the distance, screaming with joy. And there was no vapor coming from either of them, no hot air mixing with cold. They were cold as ice and just as pale. I saw it all from my bedroom window. Cleaners hanging bloodied linens out the windows like war banners. A woman throwing torn body parts off the roof of the main lodge. A gang of restaurant workers set fire to the maintenance shed, dancing around it like shrieking primates. The receptionist who'd talked to me earlier was wandering in a circle out near the back entrance. She had knives stuck through her arms and throat, but was moving around like it was nothing, her back straight, and her movements precise, predatory. There was a glow in her eyes, a reflection of the raging arson. The pity I'd once seen in them were long gone. I frantically dialed emergency services. As soon as the call connected, my mind went into a lockdown. I couldn't decide whether to scream or whisper, so I ended up doing this strange wheezing. I had to repeat what I said 3 times to even identify myself. I have no idea what I even stuttered after that, but I managed to give them an address. I think I got the point across. People were dead and things were on fire. There was a knock on the door. My immediate reaction was to toss my phone halfway across the floor. I never hung up, I think. I figured whoever was outside might have heard the noise and came to investigate. "Would you mind letting me in?" The same voice as the other night. The blonde woman who I'd opened the door for at the restaurant. This time I didn't move. I didn't answer. "I thought I checked this building." She chuckled. "Where have you been hiding?" There was a whisper. Someone was with her. Then a giggle. "You slept in the sauna? No wonder we didn't see you." I looked for something to defend myself with. There was a fireplace, but it was only decorative. There wasn't even a fire poker. I grabbed my empty bottle of complimentary champagne. It was heavy enough to cause some damage. But as I looked at that closed door, all the fight ran out of me. There were so many of them out there. I counted 9 in total, surrounding the building, dark shadows pressing up against the window, none of which were fogging up the glass. Not a single breath, not one. "It'll be quick." Her voice was muffled, but only barely. It would be so easy for them to break through. It was just glass, and yet none of them did. Open the door. Of course I didn't. I grasped the bottle tighter, hoping against hope for them to just leave. Instead, there was another knock, a slap on the windows. A few familiar faces with an unfamiliar glow in their eyes, looking my way. "I heard you went through a rough breakup," she sighed. "We're a community. There's no loneliness on this side of the door." Something in me snapped. It was one thing to hear someone talking, but now they were talking to me, specifically. Those words were meant for me, no one else. There was no way to trick myself into believing this wasn't happening. A reflex made me throw the bottle against the door, but it was useless. The bottle thumped against it and rolled away. They all erupted into laughter. A bloody handprint slapped against the window, then another, then an eager tongue, licking it up like a thirsty cat. "All right," she laughed. "Then we'll make you come to us." The restaurant workers in the distance stepped up. They were using empty beer bottles from the other night, filled to the brim, with a rag on top. Molotovs. I didn't have time to go for my phone, and I couldn't leave. The first place I could think of was the sauna. It was at least heat-resistant. It could buy me some time. I hurried into the sauna as the first heat wave pushed the door shut. Bottles were being thrown through the windows, shattering against the bedroom floor. They cheered, singing a scream rendition of London Bridge at the top of their lungs, blood-curdling falsettos. 6 bottles, one by one, added to an inferno. The smoke was already billowing into the sauna, staining my lungs. There was no option left. I had to get out. I'd die if I didn't. I dipped my sauna towel in a bucket of water and wrapped it around my head. I tucked my arms into my jacket, covered my face, and considered my route. The shortest way was the window. Facing the rear, a sharp turn to the left, and then straight forward. I plotted it. I envisioned it, and as laughter drowned in the crackling flames, I felt my tears grow warm. And I ran, one step outside, and there was already something on me sizzling. Pain on my shoulders like a searing sunburn. I could feel my skin flaking. I stepped down with my right foot, turned, and leaned into a sprint. It wasn't a conscious decision. I wasn't as much running as falling with purpose. And as I crashed through the window and air surged out around me, I threw myself into the snow by force of body weight alone. I didn't stop. Stopping meant death. Instead, I kept sprinting forward in a pace that knocked the breath in and out of my lungs like a piston. I threw the towel off my face, feeling the chill night air burn against my exposed shoulders. I was burned, but I couldn't stop to check how badly. Most of them were too busy howling and cheering to even care. Some of them were occupied with suckling on something raw and bloody. Others were too busy enjoying each other's company. Some of them were pointing in my direction. One of them fired a gun, but the shot went wild. There was only one that remained. Focused and calculated. This wasn't a game to her. This was survival. I made my way around the side of the main lodge, following a blood-spattered trail in the snow. The ground was cluttered with miscellaneous furniture thrown from the second floor window. I could see breathless faces peering out at me, but they didn't seem to care. Maybe they thought I was one of them. Maybe they thought they'd already won. Maybe they had. As I rounded the corner to the parking lot, I saw a familiar face. Ginger. She was perched on the hood of a car in nothing but her underwear, barefoot, with the bloodied remains of Tyler splayed out in front of her. There were no tears in her eyes, just a blank-faced, thousand-yard stare. She was holding up his left leg, licking an open wound clean as she pressed and prodded the dead veins for blood to squirt. A crazy idea went through my head as I grabbed a handful of snow and stuck it into my mouth. I tried to calm my breathing as I stepped into her vision. Hiding my breath might trick her long enough to gain some distance. There was visible confusion. On her face, maybe a hint of recognition. The snow kept my breath from turning to mist, making me look just as breathless as the rest of them. Ginger looked me dead in the eye as her face contorted into a snarl. "He's mine," she shrieked. "He's all mine." She observed every step I took. She sucked air into her lungs as if to make herself look larger, making an uncanny reverse hissing noise. There was no vapor coming from her breath as she exhaled. There was no chase. She already had her meal, like a house cat eating a St. Bernard. I had to get out of there. There had to be something I could do other than to run blind into the wilderness. By the south corner of the main lodge, there was a pile of clothes. They smelled of turpentine, but no one had lit them on fire just yet. Maybe they wanted to add more to it before they did. I stuck my hands in there, letting the chemicals sting my open wounds, rustling through discarded shirts and pants, some of which still had limbs attached. I managed to find a set of car keys. I held onto it for dear life, thanking whatever gods may be for the little blue sunflower cocaine I'd felt at the top of my fingertips. The keys lead me to a camper van. There was a small picture of the two betrothed men above the glove box. Since I'd seen them out in the field, I figured I had some time before they came looking for it. I put the keys in the ignition and my heart froze. There was a knock on the driver's side door. This is hardly a fitting domicile. In my haste to start the engine, I jumbled the keys. The camper van was likely older than me, and I'm not great with a steering wheel, but I was left with few options. "Please, just invite me. That's all," I sobbed. "You are incapable of completing it. Please do not enter." "How about a wager?" I did, in fact, nod. Sure, oh, sure. I'll take a wager. Come on, we can do it." Merely trying to pass the time. I floored it the second the engine roared to life. I slid the tires on the graveled road as I pressed a bloodied hand against the window, taking a hard right turn. From my vantage point in the back seat, I could make out the flames and the thronging onlookers. As they all stood there, gasping for air, some waved farewell, while others shouted. Fire vehicles had already driven past me when I arrived at a neighboring town. The moment I approached the cops, it was as if they were already privy to the details. As far as they were concerned, there had been casualties, roughly 8 in total, and reports of arson. Investigators were present. At the scene, however, the individuals I witnessed reveling in a massacre were never implicated or recorded as victims. Actually, it appeared like they were only uninvolved spectators for years. I've been following this. Night shifts are now the norm for some of the firefighters who responded to the resort that night, even though most of the survivors from that night have disappeared from social media for whatever reason. You can still see them showing up in posts, clearly very much alive. I've noticed individuals that bear an uncanny resemblance to Ginger and the two men who were engaged. None of them pretended to die or vanish. They simply blended in with society. Becoming unnoticed, it was easy to explain every death. Arson. There were only burnt corpses discovered, and the head fire marshal showed little interest in investigating further. People believed the eyewitnesses at face value for the most part. Curiously, the fire marshal went from being heavily visible to barely being noticed after switching to a night duty. In other words, it was arson. Looking closely is unnecessary. What about the time I dialed 911? It went unrecognized. I was never a danger. Therefore, it makes sense that they didn't try to keep anything from me. What they had come for had already been accomplished. Everything sprang from that one. Woman, the one who was lifeless, and as far as I am aware, she is still potentially floating around. Plus, she is no longer on her own.